Hello everyone, it's Erin LaFaive, plant priestess and herbalist with Full Circle Herbals, and we are in the 28-day plant priestess exploration. This week we're talking about dandelions, and last week we talked about mullein, and the week before that we talked about cottonwood. I can't even remember. So anyways, why I wanted to come on and talk to you about weeds, good or bad, is because I have seen some people communicating in the group and such about certain plants being weeds. So I just want to talk about that as in a plant priestess perspective. So I could talk about it in a biologist perspective, I could talk about it in a botany perspective, but I'm going to come at you with the plant priestess perspective. So most, if not all, plants that are causing problems for humans have also been brought in by humans. Dun, dun, dun. So dandelion is considered a weed by many here in the United States of America, and I suspect in other places of the world too they're considered weeds. There's lots of chemicals out there that are designed to attack and eliminate and go to war with dandelions and other weeds. Even the commercials for some of these pesticides, herbicides, are talking about war, and they make it look like they're going to battle and things like that. But we need to remember that many of the weeds that are here, the things that we don't want in our lawns and our gardens, were brought here to the United States of America from explorers across the oceans, and they brought them with them because they weren't really sure if there was going to be food or medicine here that they would know how to use. So dandelion root can be eaten. Was used kind of like a substitute for coffee in a way, because it has kind of that bitter flavor like coffee does. It's a darker color in the tea. It's easy to find, it's easy to grow, and you can just dry that root up and have access to something tasty to drink. It's good for your body as well. It helps with things such as the liver. It helps with digestion. And that root has a lot of inulin within it. And that inulin is called a prebiotic. It is the food, essentially, that the probiotics need to eat. So the roots can be fried up in a stir fry as well. And since they do have a bitter flavor, and if that's not something that you're accustomed to, I'm not accustomed to lots and lots of bitter food, but just having bits and pieces of it in like a stir fry, fresh root would be kind of tasty, add some nutrients and medicinal, qualities to your food. So the leaves are great to add to a salad again, or to cook up like spinach, or chop up and put in an egg omelet or something like that. And usually the smaller they are, and closer to the springtime, the sweeter they are. They're not as bitter as they can be when it's really hot outside or late in the season. So that part can be used as well. People will also eat the flowers when they're in bloom and fry them up, turn them into fritters, put batter on them. And also I have dried those flower tops and then added it to baked goods like pancakes or something like that. So not necessarily the seed, the fluffy part. That's not really the part I'm talking about. It's the flower when it's fresh and in bloom. So a weed is a plant out of place. So anything can be considered a weed in the right conditions. Certain plants that we want to have in our yards are beautiful, and we put them there and we plant them there. But in other places, they may become aggressive in terms of they grow so quickly and spread so wildly that they overtake everything else in that area. So that's what the term aggressive means. They're being really good plants. They're doing really good things. They're doing what they have evolved to do, but it's just that they're impeding on human use or other plants at times too. So just remember that anytime you see a plant and you think, oh, that's an invasive, it used to never be here and now it's here, now it's being a bully and taking all over. Remember that it's just being a plant. It's not trying to be mean or be a bully. It's just trying to survive and thrive. And sometimes it gets into an environment that it does super well in, and it is so happy that it can reproduce and do what it wants to do, which is spread its genetic material. And so it, just like has a party and it grows crazy. And so at times it impedes on what we want to have. Sometimes we want to have a lot of diversity in a forest or a field. And if we only see one type of plant that's wildly, rapidly spreading, well, that can be a little boring and annoying, and it pushes out all the other kind of what people call native species. So the species that were there as long as we have records for. And we do need biodiversity, lots of different things living in an area, because if you only have one type of crop, like a monocrop of something, the amount of birds and insects and butterflies and all those kind of things will also go down in number too, because not everything just lives on one species. There's lots of different plant species that different animals and other insects and ground microorganisms appreciate. So that's why having only one monocrop of a plant is kind of boring. Boring for humans, boring for other living things around it. So I do my best to refrain from using terms like invasive species and weeds. I certainly do weeding in my garden when I'm trying to grow certain foods and herbs. I need to move those other plants out of my garden so that my preferred thing can grow at that space and time. So yeah, plants aren't trying to be spiteful and revengeful. They just are trying to be plants. So when we talk about invasives, we have to be careful that we're not thinking like they're out to get us or something, because that's not the case. In many instances, humans have brought them to a location where they normally weren't found for a long time, and they sometimes get really super happy in one spot and then grow and propagate wildly. So we have to remember that humans move things around. Sometimes it gets on tires of vehicles or on ships, and as we're traveling and moving about the world, those things will come with. Seeds will come with, and spores and bits of roots that can propagate again. So we've moved things around intentionally and unintentionally, and there are consequences to that. The good news is some of those species that really spread really, really well in an area because they found an area that is perfect for their growing conditions. And if it's an area that they don't have any natural predators for, like there's no diseases or insects or any other activity that's going on that takes their numbers down, what will happen is eventually there will be a natural predator in that area that kind of finally comes along and finds that species and really takes hold of it. So Japanese beetle in my state, and it's starting on the eastern side of the United States and moving westward, but the Japanese beetle has created havoc for people because it eats a lot of different plants. It doesn't stick on one kind of specific type of plant. It can eat all sorts of things. But what they found is that as it moves across and finds a new spot, eventually it is creating problems, but eventually there is some sort of natural predator that catches up with it, and then the population starts to decline. So it's like the homeostasis, the balance of nature kicks in. So that's the good news, is eventually there is that particular aggressive, very productive plant species does eventually, I'm turning on my sound here, it does eventually catch up, and other things help keep it in check, so to speak. So yes, good or bad, determined if it's a weed, that is subjective to whatever's going on in that area, depending on the person, depending on the area. And as plant priestess perspective, got to be careful about how we talk about plants. If we talk about them in too much of a humanistic way, we think that they're doing what humans would do, which is be aggressive and mean and trying to get into an area and be the best and be the bully and all that stuff. And that's not always the case. They're just doing what they do, and that's be a plant, and they'll grow as quickly as they can depending on the area that they're in. So that's what I wanted to come talk about weeds, invasives, and thinking about them a little bit differently, and remembering that humans are the ones who 99% of the time are the culprit for bringing them into a location in the first place. So many of those invasives can actually be medicinals. So Japanese knotweed is a very tall bamboo looking plant in our area, and it grows really, it spreads fast. It's really intense, Japanese knotweed. And it's about 5 to 7 feet tall. It's really big. But Japanese knotweed is used for Lyme's disease, which Lyme's disease is from a tick, and those ticks are very prevalent in this area. So some people think that perhaps nature is bringing in the medicines that we need as humans, and that we should pay attention to what nature is providing. Barberry is another one that's can be very aggressive in our area, and again, it's used for things, it's used like an antibiotic, has berberine in it, so it's really good as like an antibiotic. So there's many other what are termed invasive species that are very aggressive and pushing out, it seems like they're pushing out other plants, but they are also have medicinal-like qualities of them. So sometimes our weeds are beneficial and helpful, and sometimes we brought them here and created our own problems. All right, well, thanks for joining in, and I hope you are enjoying the 28-day Plant Priestess exploration. Take care.